A very good morning to everyone, and welcome to today's session, uh, which is on recent trends in AI and ML. So, I don't know, I'm hearing an echo. Are there two audios on at the other end? Because I'm getting a lot of echo at my end. Is it so that there are two mics on together? Okay, so I'm just continuing. Just a second. I'm getting some. So the agenda for today is I'll have a brief introduction and then we are going to discuss some things about urban computing using unstructured text data, in which I'm going to talk about analyzing civic complaints for proactive maintenance for smart city. Then, if time permits, I'll discuss some things about social media data analytics. So let me start with my first research work. So this portion I'm covering from my paper entitled Analyzing Civic Complaints for Proactive Maintenance in Smart City. This was published in International Conference for Computer Information Science and some time back. So in this particular work, what we are going to discuss is that how civic complaints can, analyzing civic complaints can actually help to perform proactive maintenance for achieving smart city initiative, which is a Government of India initiative in the present time. So if we talk about urban computing, actually urban computing can have the concept of urban computing has many layers and many modules. So we start out with the data coming out from different sources, and this could be in form of weather data, traffic, or any other data, and also in form of civic complaints. And we can try to analyze this data using machine learning and AI techniques, some EDA techniques, data mining techniques, and then we can find out, different use cases. So the motivation for the present work is that these days most of the communities where people stay, such as apartment complexes, etc., they have automated civic complaint lodging system, because usually people don't have time to go to the municipal corporation and lodge complaints. So normally the gated communities offer their own civic complaint portal wherein the residents could lodge their complaints in form of some written text, and this text is lodged along with the complaint type, time of the complaint, and so on and so forth. And then later, when this complaint is actually resolved, then the time of resolution and all that is maintained in the data. So we are going to, we actually try to collect some of such kind of civic complaints and try to analyze it to find out what are the important complaints that are coming from a certain location. And then we also try to analyze the data to find out whether there are complaints that also co-occur. That is, there can be certain types of complaints that are always coming together. And this kind of information can be very helpful for city planners as well as for residents to decide where they would want to actually live. We try to do this analysis for actually all metropolitan cities in the world. But here, for sake of time and space, I have only included details about certain cities, primarily about New York and Bangalore in India. So then the study of this kind of data is really very challenging for several reasons. One, the civic complaints are of different categories. It's really difficult to analyze complaints which are of different categories and types. Then the number of complaints coming out from any particular region also varied, so the density of complaints were different. Then, so far, there has been no work that actually tries to assess the criticality of the complaint. So we tried to analyze the criticality also, and the different complaint types could actually have different criticality scores. So it's really difficult to find out the criticality and then to analyze them based on that. Then we also try to look at some spatial temporal correlations in the data. So for doing this, we actually try to propose a spatio-temporal clustering method. There were two approaches that we had suggested. One was the dynamic grid-based clustering approach, and another was the clustering based on zip code approach. So I will be talking primarily about DGCA, which is dynamic grid-based clustering approach. And for this particular approach, we try to look at the location density of complaints and the type of complaints. So what is this dynamic grid? So let's assume that the locality in which we want to do the study is enclosed in a this rectangular box kind of a area. So let's say that it is, and this area is actually bounded by the latitude and longitude, which are the four vertices of this bounded area. So what we try to do is that we try to analyze by assuming that the locations is bound in such a box, and we try to actually form dynamic clusters out of this area by dividing the space spatially into smaller rectangles, sub-rectangles or sub-cells. And then we kept on continuing to divide this given area into smaller subsets of rectangular grid till the density of the points within the bound was actually less than certain threshold. And why we did that? Because we wanted to identify areas which were crowded with lot of points, where points are nothing but the complaints that we try to visualize in this space. So we assume that when the density of the points is less than certain threshold, then it is not of interest to us to consider it. So we wanted to consider only those localities that had a certain minimum, the points, at least that much in them. So we try to form these clusters, and so by doing that, we actually form the clusters out of the given spatial locations of the study area. And for fine tuning these clusters, so actually each of these areas or clusters that we formed could have different types of complaints in it. So we tried to further form subclusters based on specific complaint types by considering the density of the complaints, the time to resolve the complaints, the co-occurrence of different types of complaints, and the typical time slots where these complaints occurred. So for this purpose, we actually took the clusters that had been formed from the first phase, which I had discussed right now using the dynamic grid. And out of these, we use some location-based clusters, and we try to form clusters, sub-clusters pertaining to specific complaint types. So it will be more clear as I will explain further. So for example, we had broadly six categories of complaints. One that pertain to traffic related problems, another one noise related, the third category belong to public health, and so on and so forth. So we try to subdivide our clusters based on these six different subtypes to see what are the actual types of complaints occurring in each of the clusters that we had formed. So in doing so, we considered the density of the complaints, and there were certain challenges. For example, there could be a larger area which is having certain density. So it was very difficult for us to decide which one should be more important, a larger area which is having a relatively lesser density of complaint points in it, or a smaller area which is having a very high density of complaint points coming from it. Then the average resolution time also became an important factor. So all these factors we used to compute the criticality of the complaint type. Then we also tried to look at the temporal patterns That is the time of the day where these when these complaints were occurring. And there were four time slots which we divided the day into. That is from 12 a.m. to 6 a.m., 6 a.m. to 12 noon, and so on and so forth. So we divided the day into four quarters, and then we tried to profile the criticality of the complaints also. So this is just a screenshot of some cities we had analyzed, though, as I mentioned, that we had considered the data for all the important metropolitan cities. Say, for example, for Austin, we had collected 100,000 records, Boston 33,129, and so on and so forth. For India, unfortunately, we could not get the data for all the metropolitan cities, and it was only available for Bangalore, which is a fifth most populous metropolitan area, and we could get 25,986 records uh, of civic complaints. So, in this particular presentation, I will be primarily talking about New York and Bangalore, which are similar to certain extent. That New York is again having a limited area available because of the sea surrounding it. So, if we look at New York, basically, it's I think all of us know that it has these five counties in it, which is Staten, Brooklyn, Queens, Manhattan, and Bronx. And I've also included kind of a political map here where I don't know if my cursor is visible, but I want to show you in the Brooklyn there is this Prospect Park, which is a very popular park other than the Central Park, which is in Manhattan. So these two parks are the important recreational. People go there, walk there, take their kids there, but they are in the heart of the most populous areas. So I will be discussing some important civic problems that are occurring around this area. So let's first talk about, let's say, the Brooklyn County and the Prospect Park area. When we try to analyze the civic complaints belonging to this area, we found out that uh, wrong car parking. So car parking was a very important problem that was being encountered here as reported by a lot of residents in the civic complaint lodging system. Actually, this Brooklyn Park, the Prospect Park in the Brooklyn area, as you can see here, it's in the heart of the Brooklyn County, and there is no dedicated parking area allotted to the Prospect Park. So people coming to the park with their kids or for whatever reason, they just park their cars around the road that surrounds the Prospect Park. As a result, this area becomes very crowded and often sees congestion on the road, that road. And therefore, illegal parking or parking wrongly is an important problem in this particular area. We also try to find out what were the other problems that were occurring with this illegal car parking. So we found out that congestion and traffic on road was an important problem that was co-occurring. Along with that, noise was also another important complaint type. So as I said that we try to find out, quantify this using a uh, criticality score also. And the score that we actually computed, we had tried to plot it for the different complaints coming out of the Prospect Park area in the Brooklyn County. And we found out, as you can see here, that the highest score was 0.768, which is for the car parking related problems. And it was also co-occurring with noise, traffic, and other things. And the important time slots in which this problem was occurring was from 6 a.m. when people start coming for morning walks, and it continued up to late evening time slots when people come with their kids or other things for leisure activities in the park. We did this similar exercise for all the areas in New York, and I think we all are aware about Manhattan, which is the noisiest uh, location in Manhattan, the Times Square area. So, when we tried to analyze the civic complaints in the Manhattan area, we found out that noise came out to be the most important or most critical civic complaint. And we also know this, and when we try to actually find out the criticality, we also saw that our criticality score came out to be highest from 6 p.m. to the 12 a.m. And we all also know that Manhattan becomes active only from evening up to midnight. And this continues up to around 2 or, just 2 a.m. or so. And accordingly, the score was also relatively high for the early morning hours. And during the daytime, hardly anyone goes to the Manhattan Square, and all the shows that are going on the road and all, they begin in the evening, and accordingly we could see that our criticality score was low during the daytime. If we look at the co-occurring complaints along with noise, we could see other problems such as traffic and so and so forth that were, and then parking related, car parking related problems. This is just a news clippet, which is showing the ground truth that people while walking on in the Times Square area are just closing their ears because it's full of noise. If you look at the New York area, at New York, the complete New York City, then noise and traffic were the two most important civic complaints that came out. If you look at Boston, we tried to again do the same analysis in different suburbs, and we found out that illegal car parking was an important problem that Boston was facing. Similarly, for Chicago, we found out that street services was a big problem. Street lights was an important civic complaint. Talking about San Francisco, again, noise, traffic, and street lights were important problems which this metropolitan area in US was facing. Then we try to do the analysis, so I will not go to the details of this part. I will come more to the results of Bangalore. So I like to include the results pertaining to Bangalore here. When we tried to look at Bangalore, we saw that the most, and we did this study for the different areas, locations in Bangalore. So when we saw Banaswadi area, so I think many of us already know that Banaswadi sees a lot of garbage on road, and there is a lot of litter in form of human feces, which is actually done on road, because there are a lot of underprivileged localities here and juggies in this area. Accordingly, when we tried to analyze this data, the civic complaints that came out was littering on road, garbage complaints, which came to be highest as per our criticality score. And this score also came out high during 6 a.m. To early morning hours, because this is the time mostly when garbage is on road before it is picked up by government vehicles. Similarly, when we actually tried to find out the co-occurring problems, defecation on road was an important problem, which was co-occurring with garbage. So there were people from the juggies probably defecating on road. So so this can be an indication for city planners also, probably to provide public washrooms for people living in this area. This is just a news clippet which shows litter and garbage on road in Banaswadi area in Bangalore. Coming to Marathali, I think Marathali, all of us know as such also that it is very popular for its traffic, not for such a good reason. It's just the traffic conditions on road. Now, when we try to analyze the civic complaints, we found out that traffic came out to be the most important civic complaint, and the score came out to be highest during 6 a.m. and also during around 6 p.m. when people, kids start going to school and people go to office. So 6 a.m. to around 10 a.m. and then again in the evening, it was quite high. And when we try to look at the other co-occurring problems, we saw that potholes on road, water logging, and other kind of such problems on road were co-occurring with this traffic. So probably the reason for traffic jam could also be some potholes on road, some water logging, and so forth. So this ground truth is just in form of some news clipping which talks about the great Marathali traffic jam in which people were caught for a lot of hours on road, and vehicles were just locked from all the directions and could not move on road. So when we try to analyze, we could conclude that traffic was the most important problem in Bangalore, and it was occurring during morning and late evening hours, and noise was the next problem that was co-occurring with traffic. Garbage on road was another problem in many locations in Bangalore. So now this is the overall summary of what I have discussed today. If we talk about New York, Austin, Boston, Chicago, San Francisco, and Bangalore, so Bangalore uh, mostly suffers from traffic and congestion, which is co-occurring with inefficient street services like street lights, etc. And we see that Bangalore shows a most amount of similarity with San Francisco and Boston. Again, you can it's we can visualize Bangalore is kind of congested. It is relatively a smaller, it is very congested because of the IT area and other localities. San Francisco in itself is also facing similar issues. It's a very narrow strip of land along the sea. It doesn't have much area to expand, and there's a lot of congestion, traffic related problems, and all in San Francisco. Whereas if we talk about Bangalore versus the rest of the cities, the least similar city in terms of the civic area was Bangalore versus New York, where traffic was co-occurring. Traffic was again, an important problem in New York, but it was co-occurring more with noise. Whereas in Bangalore, it was traffic and the street services such as potholes, water logging, somewhere street lights. These were the important problems that were coming with traffic. So traffic was a common problem in almost all these metropolitan areas, but probably the reasons for it were a little different. So I think with this, I like to conclude today's talk that AI and ML techniques are very important for analyzing different kinds of problems. Urban computing and the use of AI and ML is a very important trend, recent trend, and there's a lot of scope of doing a lot of good work in these areas. And it can be helpful to residents as well as to city planners. So I think with this, I will just like to conclude my talk. Uh, so now I'm open for questions.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Any questions from the audience side? Do you want to interact with Durga, ma'am? Okay, fine. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for discussing about different civic complaints and as engineers, what can be the solution provided by us for those civic complaints. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you. Uh, if there are no questions, then it's fine. Anyone has questions, you may ask. I believe there are no questions.
No questions from the audience side, ma'am. Thank you so much for
Okay.
your time, ma'am.
Thank you. It's a